So he had to get players from outside of the college. And he brought in these, black football players. He went to the cities and he went to, they call it the hood, you know, the black neighborhoods, and he imported these black football players. So there were problems involved with that, but the main problem that I'm going to tell you about first was that his daughter went to the same university at the time that he imported these players, and she fell in love with one of the players. Now, the one that she fell in love with was not one of the black players from the hood, but I believe he was a Samoan. I don't know where he imported him from, but he was not a local. Boulder, the black population in Boulder was less than 1%. It was a white community, and she fell in love with this football player, and had an affair with him. Now, this is the 1980s. You know, that's not acceptable. To have an affair, period, it's not acceptable. To have sex before marriage, it's not acceptable. To get pregnant outside of marriage is not acceptable. She gets pregnant outside of marriage. Okay. How am I going to say this? So, how am I going to say this, Lord? She goes to her father. My whole point of telling you that these young men came from outside of the town, has nothing to do with them being black. My whole point of what I'm trying to tell you is it was a different culture. He brought a different culture into a town that didn't know this culture. Now, this is really hard for me to say, but it's what I think, and I'm going to say it, okay? Apparently she came from a background, was a Bible Belt. I don't know if the Colorado was in the Bible Belt or not, but you don't do that. You don't have sex, you don't get pregnant, you don't do things like that. And what I'm trying to tell you is that the culture was different in those days. In those days, you taught your daughters not to have sex before marriage. And you taught your young men, don't have sex before marriage. But if you're going to do it, you know, if you're going to have sex before marriage, this is for the guys, if you're going to have sex before marriage, make sure it's with a girl that likes to have sex outside of marriage. You don't have sex with a virgin unless you're ready to marry her, okay? You don't take a girl's virginity, okay? If you really have to do it, go to one of those other girls. There were good girls and there were bad girls in those days. Okay? Now, I'm sorry if I offend anybody, okay? But I'm an anthropologist, you see. It's my understanding that in those days, that kind of morality did not exist by and large in the hood. Does anyone know what I just said? It didn't exist by and large in the hood. You know what I'm talking about? That the young men weren't messed up that way. If you can make a girl, you make a girl. That kind of morality that you stay away from the good girls. You don't do that to a girl unless you're intending to marry her. Okay? There might have been some young men in the hood like that, but by and large, that culture was not in the hood. Life was easier in the hood. So these young men came from a different culture, where they didn't necessarily see anything that wrong with taking a girl's virginity without wanting to marry her. So that's the first problem that I've been seeing for years to whoever would listen to me, and nobody ever wants to listen to me. I know that I've convinced anybody, especially well-meaning Christians. I know that I was in that Connecticut conference one year, and the Lord put two people at the table. I was there with Mary alone that year for some reason. And the man told me, it was a man and his wife, that they were trying to rehabilitate drug addicts so it doesn't have to be a black person, it doesn't have to be anyone from the hood. You could be a drug addict, you can be white, Chinese, green, orange. I'm talking about a degree of spiritual morality, okay? And that unfortunately, okay, at least at the time, we saw more in the hood and amongst drug addicts and alcoholics than we saw amongst the middle-class neighborhoods. Now everything's mixed, okay? That's, all the walls have been broken down, okay? So that man and his wife were at my table, and they had a farm, and they were going to take recovering drug addicts into their home. And they had 2 teenage daughters, and they were bringing these male recovering drug addicts into their home. And the Lord told me, you better tell them, don't do it. You don't do it. See? You need to understand that children or people that are living lives that are outside of society, drug addicts, alcoholics, rebellion, if they come from a culture where the rules aren't that strong, they have a very high, they have more witchcraft than the person that's growing up in a neighborhood that's under discipline. There's a spirit, especially on men, there's a spirit, well, on women too, there's a spirit of witchcraft that draws people to them, but it's not a godly spirit. And they're drawn by a sexual attraction, not because of a godly affection or admiration for the person. Does anyone, who am I talking to? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. I said to him, don't take those men into your house with 2 teenage daughters. Don't do that. You want to help them? Build a building on I wouldn't even put them in a shed on the barn, on the land. Yeah. That's not the kind of ministry you get into when you have 2 teenage daughters. I told you about a movie which was a true story. The pastor's wife was going to the jail, ministering to the man in jail, trying to save his soul, and she wound up running away with him, with the murderer. Left her pastor husband and ran away with the murderer. So this is a reality. You know? Okay? So he imported these people into the campus life, and all he could think about was football. He never thought, and now, this is not in the movie, this is me. He never thought at all about the clash of the cultures. And there was a clash of the culture, but you'll see about that in the movie. But his daughter falls in love with one of the football players who apparently didn't have any scruples about having sex with a virgin that he didn't intend to marry. Now, that could have been a young man on the campus who came right there from Boulder. It could have been. There were always exceptions. I'm telling you, in those days, that was what you taught your sons. Leave those girls alone. This young man didn't seem to have that rule. So he gets the coach's wife pregnant. Now what does the coach do? He says to the young man, you want to say something?
Well, you just said coach's wife pregnant.
His wife? No, his daughter.
Okay.
Not his wife, his daughter. Thank you. You see, you're going to see this scene with him talking to the young man. Now the girl's merely in love with him, okay? And she's carrying his baby. He calls the young man. The young man's terrified, expecting a consequence, right? The coach says to him, do you love my daughter? You don't love her? Don't marry her. Don't marry her. You don't love her? Don't marry her. Do not marry her if you don't love her. The young man's sitting there shaking, okay? And there's absolutely no consequence whatsoever. Broke his daughter's heart, okay? Later on in the movie, you see he publicly talks about her shame. Publicly talks about her shame, okay? Denies the baby a legitimate father, makes him a bastard, okay? And thinks that he's doing the right thing. So the girl wants to have an abortion, and he says, oh no, you're not going to have an abortion. We'll raise that baby. He thinks he did the right thing. What did he do? What did he do? What did he do? I want to tell you, he chose his football player over righteousness. He chose his football player over his daughter. And I forgot to tell you, because I'm not a football aficionado, okay, that this guy was the quarterback. That's the star, right? The quarterback? Mm-hmm. Right? This guy was not only the quarterback, he was the star quarterback. He was the one that was going to take them to the Orange Bowl. Now, he didn't know what he was doing, but I want to tell you that he chose that young man over his daughter. He chose that young man over righteousness. He never said to him, now look, you got her pregnant, now you did the crime, you have to pay the time, you have a child, okay? You have to marry, you give the child a name. Not a word. You don't love her? And he says in the movie, I could see that he had sex with her without loving her, and don't marry her. He chose his football player over righteousness and over his daughter. But I'm going to tell you in advance that God didn't like what he did, you see. That is sheer idolatry for his football team and for his goal of the Orange Bowl. God didn't like it. Judgment fell very swiftly. Young man contracted cancer, couldn't play that season, and within a year, maybe two, but within a year he was dead. That decision by Bill McCarthy killed that young man. He murdered that young man for the idol in his heart for that football team. See? Because if he married his daughter, well then he'd be a father. He'd have to go get a job and pay for rent and a place for them to live in. Don't marry her. I could see you don't really love her. Don't marry. Don't you do that. God killed the idol of Bill McCarthy's heart. This fine Christian man who God raised up the promise keepers out of. He's a murderer, an idolater, and an abandoner of his own child. Broke her heart. That's the main sin that I want to show you. The sin in this fine Christian man. That's why we all die. Remember, I'm not here to knock Bill McCarthy. This is a poster child example of why we die. He thought he did the right thing. Now, why didn't he see that he broke his daughter's heart? Because you only see what you want to see. It's the idols in your heart that bind you. He wasn't going to make that young man marry his daughter and go get a job and be working all kinds of hours to support the child. That was his star quarterback. I'm telling you the truth. Then the second crime was to his wife. He says openly in the movie that he never saw his kids. See? Now, you know, some women marry a man that has a 9-to-5 job, and that's fine. But some men don't have 9-to-5 jobs. Some men have careers. They don't have a job; they have a career. Whether you're a doctor, or a lawyer, or a football coach, you have a career. When you have a career, you don't work 9 to 5. You know, you work all the time. So he had a career, but he's supposed to make some time for your family. According to the movie, he never saw his kids. He had 4 kids, never saw his kids. She had to take the kids to the football field for them to see their father. Okay, this is just fact, okay? Later on in his life, he gets a revelation. After he's had much success, he gets a revelation that he's supposed to be ministering to his wife and his family. And he said, I looked at my wife. He said he got the revelation that the joy on your wife's face is supposed to reflect your treatment of her. And that's what the Bible says. That the state of mind and the condition of the wife is a reflection of who the husband is in God. So he said he looked at his wife and he saw that she wasn't happy, but that she was in anguish and in torment. So he gave up his career. At the peak of his career, he gave it up. Supposedly. Who knows why he did it? Supposedly, self-righteousness again, to minister to his wife. And as soon as he retires, he decides that he wants to wipe the slate clean with her. So he's going to tell this woman who's put up with him and encouraged him through all of these years, having an absentee husband, all of these years, been in his camp all the time. He decides to tell her about one transgression, one according to what he said, it was not an affair, it was a single one-night stand that he had. He decides to tell her, brethren, you don't do things like that. It happened 20 years ago. 20 years ago. Why are you telling your wife that you committed adultery? Why? 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 Why would you do that? There's only one reason you would do that. You want to clear your own conscience. So he sold his daughter down the river, so that for his football player, and now he sold his wife down the river, so that he can have a clear conscience. Well, maybe I'm hard, I don't know, and maybe I would be different if I had a husband these days. I don't know, maybe I don't remember what it was like to have a husband, I don't know. But she didn't take it very well. I mean, to me, it was one night stand. You shouldn't, 20 years ago, leave me alone. But she didn't take it that way. His own words are, she heard that, she went in the bedroom and closed the door and didn't come out for a year. In other words, didn't communicate with him for a year. It devastated her. So he took this woman that he saw anguish in her face, that he quit his career at its peak to be a husband to her, and that's how he starts. So, brethren, I'm not saying this man has been wrong thinking, wrong selfishness in our heart that we don't even know is selfish. We don't even know it's there. Look at this intense selfishness in this man that the world sees as great, or the church world sees as great. And I'm not knocking him. We're all in this condition. We're all in this condition. Selfish. Don't touch my quarterback. No consequence for what you did to my daughter, but God didn't agree with that judgment, and he slew the man. No time for your family, only football. Then you see the anguish on your wife's face, so you quit your job, and you kill her with the truth that there was no reason for her to know. What's going on here? That's why, brethren, that's why we die. So we have to learn these things. I've been trying my best to teach you what I know, and obviously I don't know everything because I just messed up myself. So that's all I'm going to tell you about the movie. But there's something underlying it that I don't have the full revelation yet. Maybe it will come out when we discuss the movie afterwards. I don't know, but the Lord I'm going to give you what the Lord gave me, and I know that I don't have the whole thing yet. I said, Lord, what is this? What is this with men and women? With the relationship between human men and women? Because we know now that human men and women, that we're all spiritually female. And that God has given different characteristics. He's taken a spiritually female soul and divided the qualities into two camps. And he's made one camp male and another camp female. And he said, now you two have to get along, okay, until I restore you to wholeness. And wholeness means the man is made whole by God and the woman is made whole by God. And that's the only time men and women are going to be equal, when each of the man and the woman is completed by God. See? And when you get to that point of equality, there's no sex. So I said, Lord, what is it with men and women? Because I perceived that to be honest with you, I was horrified at what he did to his daughter. I was just horrified. And I know that the Lord told me personally that the worst thing you can do to someone is betray them. Because I was betrayed by my whole family. When I was an incest victim, my whole family betrayed me. Because they wanted to maintain the status quo. It was my brother-in-law and my mother would not, and that sister was my mother's best friend. Usually when there are several children, you're more friends with one of the children than the other when they become an adult. That was my mother's best friend, and they were together every Saturday and every Sunday. The families were together. And she sold me down the river because if she faced the truth, she called me a liar. If she faced the truth, she would have had to break up that relationship with her daughter's husband. See? So that was that was my mother's football player, and I was sold down the river. And my father wouldn't take on my mother. So as I was struggling throughout the years to be restored, because the Lord called me to teach this message when I was a very devastated person, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I didn't know that I was devastated spiritually and emotionally. I didn't know that. I knew that I was sick physically. And he got me out of bed one day to go watch a movie on TV. I've learned so much from movies about how this woman in the military was gang raped. She was a general's daughter, and she was gang raped by her company. And her father would not sully the name of the company. So he betrayed his daughter, and the Lord told me the moral of that movie was the worst thing you can do to somebody is betray them. It's worse than the rape. Betrayal of someone that you trust is the worst thing you can do to anybody. So he was trying to, the Lord was teaching me this because I have all these spiritual wounds and I didn't know what was wrong with me. So he betrayed his daughter. See? So what is it with men and women that there seems to be an underlying hatred of men for the women? Now I've understood for years that to hold on to your manhood, you have to really stand up to the person that you love, and that's really hard because I'm a pastor here, you see, and I just want to be friends with everybody. But when you do something wrong, I have to stand up to you, and I don't like it. I want you all to do everything right, so I don't have to have a confrontation with you. But that's not the way it is. So it's very, very hard for a man. I'm going to be perfectly blatantly honest with you. For a man that wants to get sex from his wife, it's really very hard for him to stand up to her when she is unreasonable or unrighteous. It's very hard for him to do that. See? So a lot of marriages fall away, a lot of families get into trouble because the man won't risk his wife refusing him sex to do the right thing. See, relationships between men and women can be deadly to your soul. And that's why Paul says, let the women teach the women how to love their husbands. See? And let the men be taught how to love their wives. And in this country, nobody's taught. Maybe, I don't know about the rest of the world today. But there's something malevolent, something very deep and malevolent that underlies male-female relationships. Now, you need to understand that we're fallen, and what is deeply malevolent is the fallen nature. See? So I don't care how much in love you are, if you're not watching out for that fallen nature, you could have a problem. If you don't understand it, you can have if you don't understand it, you're like two innocents just waiting to be shot. So I said, well, what is this? What is this malevolence, this that I see from time to time, this hatred for women? And I see it from time to time in this culture. We see it in Islam, you know, every time the news goes on. She took off her veil that cut off her nose and her ears. That happened in Afghanistan a couple of years ago. She took off her veil that cut off her nose and her ears. And it's in the Bible. I've been asking for years for the Lord to explain to me these two incidents, one in Gibeah, and I don't recall the name of the other place, where the concubine was destroyed. And the owner of the concubine cut her body into 12 pieces and distributed it to the tribes. And the tribe of Benjamin, the men of Benjamin, were wiped out by the rest of Israel because of that crime against the concubine. And Lot standing there saying, you can't have the angels but take my 2 virgin daughters. What is this? What is there that I'm not, that I can't get a grip on it? I can't get a grip on it. It has to be more. It has to be more than a man having some kind of, than having a fear of castration. It has to be more than that. It's that deep hatred for the female. What is it that I'm not getting? And I don't have the whole answer, but this is as far as I got. The Lord said to me, or at least the thoughts came into my mind. Well, we've talked all about Malchus. We've talked about Malchus, how she is the foundation, how she was not happy because God had his relationship with the whole man, and that she was to be in submission. She was the foundation. She was here from the beginning, and she had to be in submission to the whole man, and she wasn't happy, so she did an evil thing and she departed, and the rest is history. Well, maybe there's another side to it. The Lord said to me, well, what goes on between men and women today, between what goes on with people today, it's a reflection of what happened in the spiritual plane. So let's take what you see between men and women today and try and relate it to the primordial times. I see a castration fear. I see a deep hatred that I believe is in everyone. It may never, you may be a man, it may never ever rise to the surface in your mind. And if you don't understand that I'm talking about deep psychological, spiritual truths, then you need to get that understanding, or you can't listen to me, because I must really be upsetting you if you don't understand that I'm talking about an archetype, a primeval hatred that's in the hearts of everyone. It's the uncivilized man in us. It's Freud's id. It's the uncontrollable, raging passions that, when they get loose, makes that person into a murderer. That's what Jesus is talking about when he says, if you're angry at someone, you've murdered them. That's what Jesus is talking about. He's saying that there is a primeval, archetypical hatred in every fallen person, which is everybody. That you may never ever recognize it. It may never arise out of the pit into your mind, but it's there. And that's why you die. See, that's what we have to get at. And brethren, I watch all these movies for I think I'm watching them for relaxation, but the Lord always uses them. I saw a movie recently, the Naked. God has helped me with my memory. It was not an American film, and it took place in a German concentration camp during Hitler's reign. So I'm not going to tell you about the movie, because I'll be here with you all day. But the bottom line is, that movie depicted the way the German guards dealt with the inmates. And I've seen several movies of this era, where as soon as the German guard, you see, everybody's human. The tyrants are just human. So when the table turns and the American army comes in, they're terrified. These tough guys with the guns, but the guy falls behind on the march, he just walks over and shoots him. You can't keep up with the others, bang, you're dead. Just leaves him laying there. See, when a stronger force comes in, these big tough guys are really shaking in their boots. So we're all the same, you see. We're all the same. What I'm trying to tell you about Hitler's Germany, okay, I'm trying to tell you about that, is that what was proven was this primordial archetype, or this primordial archetypical cruelty that dwells in every human being. And there are many accounts of how people that had Jewish neighbors that they really liked them, and as soon as it became known that the Jews were losing all their property, they were denouncing their Jewish neighbors to get their apartments, to get their property. People that would have never ever done anything like that, when they saw the culture going that way, went with the crowd because of greed. That potential is in all of us. Another shocking scene was two inmates working on the street, and some important guy's daughter goes down the street on horseback. And one of the SS guards, one of the inmates looks up at her. And one of the SS guards was so enraged that he wasn't looking at her with lust, he was just looking at her as someone going down the street. He picked up the guy, the SS guard, threw him into a pile of water that was there. And he was completely out of control, screaming, "You want to look, you want to look, you want something to look at?" He picked up a hammer and went to the man that he was talking to and killed him, smashed his head in, and dragged it over in front of the pool and said, "Now you have something to look at. Look at that." And then he took out his gun and shot the guy in the water. And all they did was look up when the horse went down the street. See, that's why we need movies like that. See, that's what's wrong about not remembering 9/11. But our government is quashing 9/11, memories of 9/11. Brethren, we have to know that under the right circumstances, you don't know which one you'll be, you see. And when the Americans liberated the camp, there was a resistance in the camp. The man who was the head of the resistance, he picked up the PA system. Just as two men were hanging, they had an SS officer, they had the noose around his neck, they were just ready to hang him, and that tough guy was shaking in his boots. And the message went across over the PA system. No lynching. No lynching. We are not like they are. We are not animals. When someone commits a crime, we give them a trial. And when they're guilty, we execute them by law. No vigilante lynchings. And they took the noose off of the guy's neck. See? So, brethren, there is an evil in the depths of our soul. And if you can't believe that it's in you, at least at this time, you're not qualified for immortality. And you can change. Don't make this about you. Don't say that I'm telling you you can't make it. Because none of us can make it except for Jesus. But in order for us to enter into immortality, there's no rapture, brethren. There's a change of nature. And the Lord's not changing our nature without us first admitting what's there. So when Jesus said, if you get angry at somebody, you're a murderer, that's what he was talking about. Listen to me. It's the same potential in you that gets angry at somebody that was in that SS guard. Only one was further along than the other. The same thing. The same thing. See? And it's in all of us. So, I'm following these thoughts, and the Lord says to me, Adam was not royalty. Malchus, she was royalty. Malchus was the female seed. Royalty. She is the princess of the kings that descended from Sophia. Direct descendants of Adam Kadmon. She's royalty. So who was Adam? Who was Adam? He was the female royalty, the princess Malchus, and Elohim entered in Malchus from underneath the foundation, and Elohim from above, which is the mother and the son. The mother's royalty, and the son are royalty, and the Malchus are royalty. Adam's not royalty. He's not royalty. He's the consort of the queen, or of the when she gets married, she'll be a queen. And he said to me, you can understand everything by looking at your human condition today, because we are Adam. We are the residue of Adam. We are not royalty, despite what the church and the Jews teach, many Jews teach. We are not royalty. There is royalty in the midst of us. Christ in the midst of us is royalty. Christ Jesus in the midst of us is royalty. We are earth. We are earth. We are not royalty. But we want to be royalty. So we have a whole church world, and probably of the Jews that study, okay, saying that they're royalty, that they're better than everybody else. They have a soul that comes from God, and they're better than everybody else. And the Christians are saying we're king's kids, and we're better than everybody else. No, but you're not. According to the translation of the book of Revelation, we are the domesticated animal. We're the domesticated animal that carries the royalty. We're the horse that the royalty rides upon. And that's who Adam is. He's earth. His whole existence depends upon the princess, which is his foundation, and the mother and the son from above, which is his manhood. But he by himself is nothing. It's like Jesus saying to us, without me you can do nothing. So we talked about Malchus being frustrated with Adam, that she was royalty and well, she was there from the beginning and she had to submit to him and she didn't want to do it. But never up until yesterday or the day before, whenever God gave me this, I think it was Friday, it never occurred to me that Adam might have some angst against Malchus, that Adam might have mistreated Malchus in some way, and that she dealt with that abuse in an ungodly way, which is what I talked to you about with regard to myself on Thursday, that the tenant that God provided was being very abusive to me, and I'm the representative of the ministry here. I felt I was defending the ministry, saying, you're not good for the ministry, go away, I'm not going to do business with you. So God's provision to me was abusive. God's provision to MCCK was abusive, and I dealt with it in an ungodly manner. So maybe Adam was abusive to Malchus, and she dealt with it in an ungodly manner. Now, I don't have all the answers yet, but this is something to think about. So let's say Adam was jealous of Malchus. Even though he had everything, he was the whole. Jehovah spoke to him directly. He was going to be made invincible. Okay? It was his name, Adam, that was being broadcast to the powers and principalities that were present because of they were needed for the physical form. He had everything. And he was jealous of that one that had that one little ewe lamb. Malchus, the humble female seed in the midst of him, that was sacrificed by God, because the rules were that the male was the one that would be seen and the male was the one that would be honored and respected. Maybe he was jealous of her. Maybe that hatred resulted in an abuse that was so intolerable for her that she behaved and responded to it in an ungodly manner. Now that's as far as I've gotten. Now listen, brethren, the more we understand primordial principles, the closer we are to immortality. That's on the spiritual level. On the human level, the more we understand primordial archetypes, the more equipment and ammunition we have to lead a positive life in this world. Because if somebody abuses you and you can understand their motives, I find it much easier to forgive when I can understand their motives. Now, in this world today, we're being taught to forgive and not give any consequences to, and it's okay to justify people's sins because bad things happen to them. I'm not saying that. There's a consequence for everything you do. And if someone in your life doesn't pronounce that consequence upon you, if the person in authority that you abuse, okay, if they don't pronounce the consequence on you, if their husband or their wife or their father or their pastor or somebody, the prophet in the land like Elijah, if there isn't somebody around that has the authority to tell you you're wrong and pronounce the consequences upon you, you're going to marry my daughter. And if you don't, I'm going to knock your behind right out of this team. I don't care whether you're a quarterback or taking us to the Orange Bowl or not. You're out of here. Not only are you out of here, I'm going to ruin every chance you have with another team in this United States of America if you don't marry my daughter. See? Instead of saying something like that, my point just got knocked right out of my mind. The point that I was making knocked right out of my mind. What was I? Does anybody know what I was saying?
Justification.
Justification. For our own sin, you know. Yes, okay, thank you. I'm not saying that I don't justify sin. Okay? Every sin shall have its just recompense. And if I know that you've sinned and I'm in a position where I have authority over you, and that could be someone in the airport, if Christ Jesus rises in me, I have authority over you. Brother, I have been in supermarkets and places where average people go shopping for their average day's work, and I've seen children misbehaving, and I have rebuked the children. I never told you that. I do that. It's only when God rises in me, and the parents never hear it. The Lord always has the parent turn away, and the child look at me, and I'll do something like, that's happened to me several times. I'll say to the child. The parent never sees it, and the child settles down. When Christ Jesus rises in you, you have authority to say something or to do something. Okay? So, I'm not talking about justification. I'm saying that when someone hurts me personally, I know that when I get angry, it's sin. I don't want to get angry. I don't want to sin. I want to have a godly response to your sin. Because my primary motive in life is to be a righteous person. I want to be a righteous person. I want God to be pleased with me. It's even beyond wanting immortality. I want Him to be pleased with me. I want to do right. Okay. For today, not talking about immortality, not talking about longevity. This is the kind of person I want to be. So, I don't want to get angry at you if you hurt me. What I'm telling you is that it helps me to not get angry if I can see your weakness. If I can see the weakness that produced this violence towards me. If I can see the weakness that produced this cruelty towards me. It helps me to forgive you. Because forgiveness is not, what a lot of people call forgiveness today is not forgiveness. They say, okay, I forgive you, and they walk away, and they're burning inside. There's a resentment inside that's churning and contributes to future illness. Forgiveness means that you forgive them, and it's like, forgiveness means like they never did it. So I find that understanding the weakness that generated that cruelty towards me helps me to not sin. But there's no way I'm justifying what they're doing. In many instances, the Lord raises me up. He raises me up to a high place. And I look at them and I feel pity for them. I feel pity for them that they're so jealous. I feel pity for them that they're so full of hate. I feel pity for them that they don't know God like I know God. That's how you live. That's how we're delivered, by our state of mind. That's how you can forgive anybody, anything. To understand where God has raised you up to and where these poor people are. And thank God, I thank God I'm not there anymore. So this is as far as I got. That I think that it's a good possibility that Adam somehow abused Malchus, and she reacted in an ungodly manner, and we're playing that interaction between the two of them. We're playing it out. Every human being on the face of the earth is playing it out over and over and over and over again. And brethren, if I could only get you to understand this, that everything that happens in our life is an overcoming of sin. Everything happens in our life. It's an overcoming the sin that Adam and the Malchus committed at the time of the fall. In each and every one of us, in our own life, in every relationship that we have their sin inside of us. We have that primordial couple inside of us. We have that primordial abuse inside of us, and we have that primordial ungodly reaction inside of us. And that's what we're doing down here in this world of action, working it out to have the right responses when the abuse comes, or to not abuse. Because even if you look at yourself as the victim all the time, everybody has the potential to both be abuser and victim. Nobody's one thing, we're all everything. See? So how, brethren, when we work out the marital problem between primordial Adam, no, I don't mean Adam Kimon, I mean the primordial Adam of the world of creation, and the Malchus, we will ascend into the immortal world. Each one of us in our own selves has to overcome the conflict of that Adam for the world of creation in his primordial state, and the Malchus. And when we work it out, we won't die anymore. So how can we work it out if we don't understand what the problem is? And that's what this kind of message is all about. Trying to find out, and I'm trying to share with you, as the Lord teaches me, what the problem is. Whether we are deeply into psychoanalysis here, for those of you that are following the program. If you're not following the program, that's between you and God. I'm not mad at you. I'm a brother. I want the end of the whole thing, and I want you all to have it too. If you're not doing the work, you know, I've got too much trouble taking care of myself with my own problems, with all the work I have here, with the internet going down and everything that's happening all over the place, trying to distract me from what I'm doing. I don't worry about whether or not you're working the program, unless something raises up right in front of my face, and then I have to deal with it because I'm supposed to be a leader here. But if it's not happening right in front of my face, I'm not watching you, what you're doing. But I'm telling you that what we're doing here is a deep psychoanalysis. Deep of what's going on inside of our heart and our mind and our soul. There's a pit inside of us, and there's evil that dwells in that pit. And it has to be exposed before it can be destroyed. And when it's destroyed, we'll return to immortality and righteousness and a godly life without problems and trouble and pain and torment. Because all of that comes from the powers and principalities that live in our pit. So we're all murderers, and we're all adulterers and adulteresses, and we're all jealous, and we're all prideful. And sometimes we know it, and sometimes we don't know it when we're manifesting those things. God wants to show us when we manifest those things so that we can reject it and not do it again and kill that part of us that has deceived us into thinking that what we're doing is right. He thought he was a righteous man. He was righteous to the sinner. You don't love her, don't marry her. Now, brethren, that's the way it goes. Now, that was back in the 1980s. But I've heard that all over the place today. The first time I heard it when I was living back on Piedmont Drive. My neighbor told me her daughter was pregnant, and she wouldn't marry the guy. Got pregnant in college. She said, oh no, she's not going to marry. She doesn't love him. They just for having sex. She doesn't love him. Oh no, I don't want her to marry him, you know. See, that is ignorance, that you don't understand that you're cursing that baby, that baby is a bastard. You think that that's just some social superstition, that they call a child a bastard. That child is cursed for 10 generations if it's not broken in Christ Jesus. So you're so self-righteous, you wouldn't force your daughter to marry a man that she doesn't love. She just happened to have sex with him one night. Do you realize how ridiculous you sound? Are you listening to yourself? So you made your daughter a harlot in God's eyes. Okay, don't tell me I'm prejudiced. That's what the Bible says. You made your daughter a harlot, you made your grandson a bastard, and you killed the father. And this is an upright, upstanding citizen. And I'm not being sarcastic because we're all capable of the same thing, and we've probably all done it. We've probably all done it when we've sold someone down the river because it wasn't in our best interest, and you never noticed it because it was just one little sentence or one little word, or somebody was telling the truth about something and you didn't want to hear the truth about that person, so you justified it. You murdered the person telling the truth, you see. Because you stuck up for the person that you in your own mind, you put yourself in their shoes, and so you defended the person. You were really defending yourself. You murdered the person who was violated because you denied the truth. See? You thought it was nothing, see? But you're a murderer. Now, there's no point in telling you this if you don't understand what we're supposed to do with this information. If you think that I'm just picking on you and calling you a murderer, then you miss the whole thing. And you're not ready for this depth of a message. Okay, so it's 2:30. Does anybody have anything? Don't say anything light. Don't say anything that's going to exalt yourself. Just any. I don't see that anybody can have anything to say. The message is too powerful. Okay, so, brother, we're going to watch this movie. If you're in this meeting, I'm telling you that we're going to be watching a movie named The Gospel According to Mac. It's available on Netflix. And if you want to watch this on your own computer while we're watching it here, I have no intention at this time anyway, of interfering with the movie to make comments. I have no intention of doing that. So if you think you would be more comfortable watching it on your own computer or your own TV, that's fine with me. And I invite you all to join us after the movie, and we will have a discussion. I hope for audience or congregation participation. I hope that we can have a vibrant discussion over the movie and anything else that any of you saw in this movie, and anything that you would have to say. I hope that we have a vibrant discussion afterwards. Okay, so we're going to end this file.